Business owners of Reddit, what's the most obnoxious reason an employee had to be fired over? Pawn shop employee stole $400 from the cash register, then realized that there were video cameras. He had no idea where the security footage was stored, so in order to cover his tracks he set the store on fire. He actually ended up getting pretty badly burned in the process, and went to jail right after the hospital. I guess you could say he got fired twice that day. Had a guy who we hired who showed a lot of potential, sales. He was a little arrogant and had a good sized ego, but wasn't enough of a problem. He was very good at sales and eventually it went to his head. He started showing up late all the time, leaving early, cutting corners where he could. The final straw came when he showed up late, and someone spoke up about it to him. He decided the best choice of words he could yell were, "I make the most sales and I have the biggest dick, so you can all fuck off." He was fired on the spot. Customers thought it was pretty funny though. The company I work is a contractor for a giant corporation, and we go to different stores to do work. This new guy we hired seemed normal at first, but it turned out he was a complete freaking idiot. So one day, he goes on site with one of the senior employees to shadow him. This genius thought that because we did work for the giant corporation we could just eat anything off the shelves, and from the refrigerators free. Well, employee saw this, and was like, "What the freak are you doing? You need to pay," and manager comes. This guy then started fighting with the manager, then got in his car after and drove off. Needless to say his ass was fired the next day. I used to own a bakery and a woman quit because she blamed her yeast infection on a bad batch of yeast I bought from China. I may be a guy but I don't think that's how it works. Depends on what she's using for a bread box. I used to manage a store in the mall. One of my employees, I'm pretty sure, was cheating on her husband with a mall security guard. I would come by on my days off and he'd scurry out in a fluster. I never mentioned it, but the guy was coming by all the time to the point that it was keeping her from doing her job. Finally, we had a work meeting and I said in a very non-accusatory way, something like this: "I know it gets slow in here during the week, and I'm guilty of it myself, but from now on I need everyone to keep personal visits to a minimum, or during your lunch break." She stands up and starts screaming at me. How dare I accuse her? I'm a bitch. She quits. She continued to call me and leave me harassing voicemail for a while too. Woman was using company FedEx to deliver purses for her Etsy shop. When you guys found out, you should have ordered a purse to the address of the HR department. Then just watch her panic in confusion. Panic at the FedEx medical clinic. An employee told a patient he wants to know what she tastes like. Doesn't get much worse. Not many exit interviews start with, "We really hope that was just sexual harassment, but we're gonna inventory the samples just in case." Tool and die shop owner here. One of our machinists would go out for lunch and slam back 3-4 beers every day. When I found out, I told him he can't drink beer at lunch. He said it was his time and what he did at lunch was his business, not mine. The next day he came back from lunch smelling like beer. I let him go on the spot. A few years later he showed up in my office asking for his old job back. He said that he was an alcoholic back then and was sorry for his behavior. He was now sober and needed a job. I hired him on the spot and it worked out great for 5 or 6 years. Then he started drinking again and I had to let him go a second time. I have no idea how he is doing now, but I often wonder. He was a great machinist and a nice guy when he was sober. I've told this story before, but it sticks with me. Years ago, like in the 90s, my husband worked for a small company. He did a little bit of everything and one of his jobs, along with a co-worker, was keeping all the computers running. Now this was a sales-based company, so all of the salespeople had laptops for themselves. If there was an issue or problem, they'd bring them in to be looked at. So, one day, one of the non-local sales guys was in for a meeting. He said, "Hey, my computer is running really slowly. Can you take a look at it?" My husband says, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Sales guy leaves the computer and goes to whatever meeting he was off to. My husband and his colleague take a look and see that the disk is nearly full, and figured that was slowing things down. They dig deeper and see the computer is filled with porn, like filled with it. Porn of all sorts, nothing illegal per se, but very close to it. Now, mind you, The salespeople signed an agreement that their assigned computer was for business use only, not personal use. So, we have a slight problem here. My husband and his colleague, not wanting to make a mountain out of a molehill, and not wanting the guy to lose his job over a fixable problem, just wiped the drive clean, reformatted it, got things set up again, and the computer was working great. The guy comes back the next day and my husband goes, "Hey, Celeste guy, we took a look at your computer. It was running slowly because the disk was nearly full with personal files, so we wiped it clean, reformatted things, and you're good to go." You know, just a reminder that our company issued computers are for business use only. If you're looking for something for personal use, here are some relatively inexpensive laptops with a lot of storage space. You can put whatever you want on it. Small investment for privacy, you know, and with that, they gave him a printout list of some good, reasonably priced laptops he could purchase for himself. The Celeste guy just kind of mumbled something, grabbed his computer and was on his way without so much as a thank you. Well, the guys figured that was that, but guess who was back 6 weeks later with a not working at all computer? Yep, Dumbus. Problem? Yep, computer was again filled with porn. They were done at this point. The two of them went straight to the president's office, showed her what was on the computer, well enough to give her an idea, and explained what had happened previously. She was a very no-nonsense lady, so needless to say by 3 PM that afternoon, that Celeste guy was no longer employed. What an idiot. I worked for a boutique hotel, you know, small, cute, expensive AF, as an ops manager. Basically, unless the area manager had to come in, I was the law. I get a frantic call on my downtime from an employee claiming our overnight guy tried to assault him. I have a sigh, as the guy freaking out is notorious for being a drama queen. I load up the security camera on my home PC, go to the time frame, and holy shit. Our night guy legitimately lunged at his coworker and tried to strangle him. Luckily a desk was between them, and that gave the victim time to bolt. Instantly felt like a dick for doubting him. Well, this is when I call in the area manager. We show up at the ass crack of dawn, and speak with the dude who made the attack, and he claims he didn't do it. We show him the video, and I shit you not he responds with, "I don't recall the events of that evening." We fired him on the spot. What started the fight, you ask? Well, the victim had done extra work to make the attacker's shift easier. The attacker felt like this was an insult to his work ethic. Oh, and I got multiple reference requests from similar hotels asking for a good reference. I simply said I wasn't able to provide a positive reference, as legally that was all I could say. Employee, does a nice thing overnight guy, you deserve to die now. My wife and I started a small software company 20 years ago. She's the manager, and does sales and HR. I do the programming. Anyway, we hired a programmer one time, and the first day on the job I spent the whole morning with him going over our development philosophy, how we do source control etc, and then showed him an overview of our applications, and how we build them. Along the way he was highly critical, pointing out what he considered flaws in everything. After lunch he goes back in to see my wife. He obviously didn't know we were married. We don't share surname, and at work we keep pretty much to ourselves. He says to my wife, "You know how to fix this company? You need to fire that other guy." We still laugh about that one. About a year ago, I hired a guy who was down on his luck. Went against my best judgment. Due to the nature of my business, I usually don't hire people that fit his profile. Out of shape, poor hygiene, etc. It wasn't long before I started hearing complaints from female employees and clients. Turns out that he would often attempt to flirt with women, and when turned down, he would lose his mind and call them terrible names and insults. I don't tolerate that shit, so I gave him a very stern warning. The very next day, I found one of my sweetest female employees visibly upset. Upon inquiring, she said that the dipshit had followed her home yesterday to make sure she got home safely, then showed up this morning to escort her to the office. She was genuinely scared. I called him into my office and told him to scram. He threatened to file a complaint with the Department of Labor for discrimination against men who have an innate need to protect women. Didn't matter. Told him to beat it. And now I'm fighting the stupid claim with the doll.